been really interested in that story and that perspective.
What does Free Cities Foundation do?
There's a book that was written in 1997. It's called The Sovereign Individual. And the book not only influenced early Bitcoiners like myself a lot, because it was one of the first books to have a kind of prophetic vision of a cryptographic cyber money becoming important in the world. But at the same time, it had another vision of citizens becoming more mobile and taking with them their more mobile capital as well, and have jurisdictions actually compete for those citizens, bringing business, bringing their ideas, their families, their value creation to different places. And I think that was really prophetic in a sense. It has played out. We seem to have been in a process of more decentralization due to technology, with the help of technology. And we have seen parallel structures emerge. Cryptography, of course, is one of the most important tools, and that has led to the cypherpunk movement, which was very influential for Bitcoin and for Bitcoin to emerge. But we've also seen more competition between political structures and change political structures. Most people don't know that these days there are thousands and thousands of special economic zones around the world that compete for businesses. Even North Korea has a special economic zone, because in the end you need some value creation. So that landscape has changed quite a lot from the victory of the nation state, and then it seemed like the victory of one imperial state more or less throughout history, and that has been rolled back a bit, and at least, of course, there's doubt, but also hope about new structures emerging. And it's the idea that maybe something that we've seen in history, that networks of jurisdictions could emerge, like the free cities of the past. In Europe, we have first the North Italian cities, and of course Lugano, place we were at, was an important node in these kind of networks, as trade networks and monetary networks, and then later on the Hanse cities of the north, and they played a very underrated role in the development, cultural and economic development of Europe. And I think it's fascinating to see history in front of our eyes at an increasing pace.
How does the Free Cities Foundation fit in this context?
Yeah, the Free Cities Foundation is one of the many initiatives that try to figure out how that would apply in the present, and they are looking for projects, presenting projects, and educating about the idea of parallel structures. There are lots of projects getting started. I mean, with everything new, I say most projects will fail, but eventually we have high hopes that some new structures will emerge, and they'll even be structures of people living together, finding new ways to live together, either based on technology or based on novel jurisdictions, and that will see a new network emerge. But the Free Cities Foundation is not my main activity. I'm consulting them. I'm the chief economist. My main focus is like going even more principled perspective on current events. And that's a tradition of the Austrian School of Economics that's not only influenced, I think, the creation of Bitcoin, but also this thought in long patterns of human action, and how politics and economics interplay. And I think it's a very valuable tradition, a very realist tradition.
What's the relationship between a free city and a Bitcoin city?
A Bitcoin citadel is a meme, so it means it's an idea. And it comes from Bitcoiners realizing that they are not only using a tool, but they see also an overlap in values with other Bitcoiners, and they like that. And they think, of course, that there should be a better way to live, and they are a bit eager and see more progress in the world. And I think that's one of the great things about Bitcoin, it brings together people with a contrarian perspective that are still hopeful and positive, that are not like dystopian and feeling powerless, but they feel that change within their lifetime is possible. And so, of course, they not only think about better money, they also think about better ways of living together. And they allow two different like parts of the world. The one is the privileged people. They have great passports, like myself. They can travel almost any place, and they can take full advantage of this new mobility and how mobility enhances liberty. That's the perpetual traveling, permanent tourist way. Just people have figured out that most places tend to treat tourists best because they bring money, so they won't bother you too much. That, of course, is a problem for people who have families, who have attachments, who want to build up something in a place. And then, of course, for the rest of the world, that's not that privileged, that's not mobile. They are stuck in places that some call shithole, places like a shitcoin, similar concept, more or less like political structures that are scammy, that will fail, and not sustainable in the long run. And so, of course, we have to think in both ways. How can there be offers for mobile people that still like have attachments and want to build up something and have families? And a lot of Bitcoiners are contrarian, even in the sense that they have kids because they have a positive outlook of the future, in contrast to most Europeans who are not getting kids anymore because they think the future is so bleak, so they don't care about that. And then we have to think about how we can provide tools that help the less privileged people in the world that are stuck in their places, stuck with bad money, but also stuck with bad rules, with bad software of living together. And that's, I think, where we'll have most leverage to change the world to the better.
How would people live in a free city?
There are many different concepts. So we're in the stage of like figuring out what works. Many things won't work. I'd say there are like three potential concepts. One is to get a special economic zone plus with extended sovereignty. So you really have a new jurisdiction. It's not sovereign, but it has a high level of sovereign laws or special laws for the people living there. And of course, we've seen that. That's already existing. Places like Dubai offer special zones like that provide rules that are particularly good fit for the people who are moving there. And that's one approach. So we have lots of projects now negotiating with governments, trying to get constitutional laws to change and have places to experiment on and improve upon special economic zones, of which we have thousands. Most of them could do much better. And so that's one approach. You bring investors, potential investors to countries that have challenges in development because even their own population doesn't trust the rules they're living with and structures they're living with. So you want to try out with new structures that when they fail, someone bears the cost of that, and it's not a population through politics, but it's actually investors who risk their own money. And so they're eager to learn something and figure out what works. And if it works, it can be replicated everywhere. That's the great thing about entrepreneurial innovation. The second approach is intentional communities. You just get people together that share similar values. That has challenges, of course, as well. We see lots of projects emerging of like people. They have a more mobile mindset now. They're figuring out, okay, which is a good place to live at. Are there people that are like-minded? Lots of people are looking, if they're Bitcoiners, they're looking for other Bitcoiners. Where are they living? Where are they going to? It's a kind of network effect of people going together. Now, the thing I'm most involved with in that scene is an approach to try to offer an entrepreneurial offer for families that has locations, but it's not one single location. It's multiple locations that are combined in, I think, very innovative way to allow to make the best use of the mobility that a good passport should provide you. So it's for now, it's a European offer, and still have the cohesion you want to have if you want to raise a family, and the cohesion to live together with other people. We don't want to live on our own on an island usually. We want to have economies of scale, of living together with other people, cooperative possibilities, and more or less is like this a longing of lots of people. I don't want to live in a village where people are sane. And I think it's an entrepreneurial process to find out what kind of offer you're going to do. And I'm focusing in particular on Bitcoiners because I think it's a great group of pioneers that are mobile, that have realized that there's a chance to like figure out better structures and yeah, are eager to find like positive ways to increase their liberty within our lifetimes.
What is your opinion on Bitcoin from an Austrian economic perspective?
Yes, most Austrian economists did not understand Bitcoin, which is surprising because it's the tradition that's really best suited for understanding it. And even the economist coming closest to predicting it was Friedrich August von Hayek. And the reason is, of course, something that Menger realized, that money and monetary phenomena are not conscious creations of our own, they are discoveries. So you got to discover it on your own, and you only discover it if you're ready for it. If it's either a need you have yourself and you figure out it's a good tool and then you discover it, or you really have a lot of empathy for other people and you listen to them. And that's usually not the way academia approaches subjects. It's like if you go top down from definitions and it's something new emerging, usually it doesn't fit the definition. So I think Austrian economics, if it's well done, but it has almost disappeared as a tradition. It was a strong interdisciplinary, very realist tradition when it was there in Austria. It has changed a bit its shape. I try to continue that tradition as I think it was meant to be, and my role model is Mises in the Mises Circle in Vienna at the time, so not the university classes or the teachings. They usually led astray. The more interesting Austrians are the lesser known Austrians, those who were practitioners, and Mises invited in his seminar not only very few economists, lots of scientists from other disciplines, but also practitioners like bankers, entrepreneurs, artists, and so on. And I think that's what it's about, a realist interdisciplinary approach to phenomena, social phenomena, and money is one of the most interesting phenomena. The problem is just if something new emerges, something changes, it doesn't have the label money on it. But with Bitcoin, I think we can see a discovery process of people realizing a good they have a hard time understanding, getting more and more moneyness. So having functions that as economists we can try to group in the class of monetary phenomena, monetary functions. But that's just terms.
What's the biggest Austrian economic idea you see in Bitcoin?
Yeah, probably like it's Menger's approach to empathically try to understand what makes people discover moneyness in things. And he thinks it's like you enhance your capacity for exchange. You find more potential exchange partners. It makes it easier. But also it's something that he could like from the thesaurus, thesaurating function, which is a savings function. So we need to transform our income into wealth because we all age. And when we are old, we want to retransform wealth into income. So it's a kind of timing or handle uncertainty over time and over place. There's like the exchange function. And so it's real human needs. Everyone ages. Everyone has a problem of a temporal mismatch and a spatial mismatch. And that's what the tool is about. And I think that's one crucial idea. And the other crucial idea comes from Hayek, who figured out money is not a thing that Menger knew already, but it's even the word is misleading. Money is an attribute. So there can be like increasing, changing, competing moneyness as an attribute of different goods at the same time. So it's not always clear what has the most moneyness, and it's a discovery process. And maybe even different things may have differing levels of moneyness over time and for different people in different contexts.
What Austrian economist would you suggest for a person learning about Austrian economy?
If you read German, I've written a lot of books. I've written more than 15 books. A few of them are, I think, good introductions to the Austrian school. If you read English, there's one book of mine, The Austrian School for Investors, that's available in English, or I'd recommend Seyfettin's Principles of Economics or Knut Smalenholm's Praxeology as introductory texts. Then, of course, going back to the originals, always a good idea, maybe challenging reading them, but I think that the greatest minds of the Austrian school, of course, Menger and Karl Menger and Ludwig von Mises, and almost all of their works have been translated to English and other languages, and they are available for free online, so anyone can read that.
Can you tell us something about your next speech in Latin America?
Yes, of course, there are close historical links, but that are very polarizing. So, of course, most people know about this colonialist heritage, and that's a strain on relations, it's a strain on identities. And of course, that's part of the European heritage. It was a quite war-torn region with a lot of aggressiveness going outside of Europe and a lot of bad ideas. Almost all the bad ideas around the world you can trace back to Europe. So it was really seminal. But most people miss that there's something underlying. There's always been a less visible tradition. So I think like the European mindset is not only one of like controlling things that we had in the top-down Enlightenment, as well as like we know better, and so we got to shape the world. First, there's something positive, at least it's a very active approach, which modern Europe doesn't have even that anymore. There's nothing of that active power there, but there's energy, of course, is overwhelming, but there's always been another bottom-up process, a bottom-up enlightenment of an interest in the world, and very early voyages, and usually like following the voyages of the colonizers are voyages of people like interesting in learning about the world, understanding it, and those are little known, like for example, Alexander von Humboldt, who I think that the part of thought, the school of thought he's part of is a predecessor of the Austrian School of Economics. It's a very unusual, realist, down-to-earth approach arising out of German-speaking Europe, and it's amazing how pioneering he was as a scientist in many fields of sciences, but also like in discovering a continent not only for Europe, but discovering a continent for the people on the continent. Sometimes you need foreigners come in and show you what you have and where you're at. And I think that's an amazing story of these links of knowledge. But of course, they wouldn't be possible. I mean, it's impossible at the time. You don't just get a flight ticket to go someplace. It takes so much capital and so much risk to go there. So of course, you needed to have this kind of monetary structure that was like providing the money for the fleets, because it gave some additional like cash flow, and all the institutions, of course, you needed, from insurance to portfolio investing and so on, emerge out of the European merchant tradition that provided the capacity, the technology, the capital, and the capacity and willingness to bear uncertainty that made it possible to link continents that without that potential technology and capital would have been impossible. So then, of course, you peacefully live next to each other, but you don't know anything about yourself, so you don't have the capacity even to cooperate and the capacity for win-win cooperation. So I think it's great that the world is linked these days. Of course, it brings risk, and it brought risks at the time. But I think there's an undervalued history behind the bonds that unite us, the cultural bonds, of course, even you still seen in the languages and the identities. And I think we should remember the positive underpinnings of these links.
Why do you think Alexander von Humboldt was a proto-Austrian economist?
Most of German thought and philosophy was really idealist. It's like you are more interested in great ideas and abstract concepts, like reality is something that you don't care too much because always flawed. And the Austrian school appeared as a counter-reaction to what that dominant strain of thought of German philosophy, and in particular the historicism, which was like always looking into the true meaning of identities, like who is the real German, what is he like, this kind of idealism that doesn't care too much about real people because they always fail in that regard. But there were always important thinkers, and Humboldt is closer to that tradition of which also Goethe is part of, and Goethe in his Faust, he has some insights into monetary theory that are predecessors of Austrian economics, and I think that it comes from and it shows itself an interest in the natural sciences, but it comes from realism. And it's like a real interest for the real world, not what you have in your mind, the utopian thing, or let's just construct it, let's shape it. And I think you have that strength, and it found a refuge in Austria-Hungary at the time, because the political structures were failing. You had a new hub where most civilized and intellectual people with money wouldn't go into politics because it was shut, so they had to engage in culture and science and the economy. So I think it was nourished a bit by these more realist traditions. So in that sense, I think it's a predecessor.
Do you think that Lugano has the potential to become a free Bitcoin city?
Yes, the unique thing about Switzerland, it's still a more decentralized structure within Europe. So it's a more European structure, even though most people in Europe perceive it as something outside, because outside of the European Union. I think Switzerland has maintained more. They've lost a bit, of course, as well, but relatively it's still a more decentralized structure with a bit more autonomy for local authorities, for the cantons, and there's more competition even between the cantons. So that, I think, is a great base to start from, and that what we see, like in many places, it's not thinkable like a local mayor would risk that much and try out something new. It seems very entrepreneurial. So it comes from a spirit that like competition isn't bad. You try out something new and you figure out if people like it or not. And I think there's more understanding in Switzerland, okay, that you can do that. Of course, you're within bound limits. So I see it potentially more as a very interesting node, an important node that over time may show something that others are eager to copy and figure, okay, something seems to be working there. The problem, of course, is that the Swiss have a relatively good lifestyle. And then the case for Lugano is that relatively to other parts of Switzerland, it had a bit of lackluster growth. And it seemed like people are getting too old, the young are moving away. So in that sense, it's within Switzerland, it's a good pressure for change. But within the world and Europe, it's still such a privileged place that I'm not sure the pain is enough to really become like the world leading jurisdiction, that I wouldn't expect so much like top level upside. But within Switzerland, I think it could be a great example, leading by example. And then hopefully other places see that even if you start from a much worse position, the upside must be so much greater. And so I think the real crucial change will be in the regions of the world that are less privileged.
If there is one question you could ask Satoshi, what would it be?
How long it took for him to understand Bitcoin? Because I assume he couldn't understand it when he created it. It's like an experiment, and how his view has changed over time. What he has discovered in his own creation, more or less. Because of course it's not something you give to the world and then it just works as you assume it would. It's like people do something with it and discover it, and I'd be really interested in that story and that perspective.
What do you like the most about Lugano so far?
Oh, it's a beautiful city. I like the shape of it because it has like different levels of height. That's amazing already, the experience going down from the train station. And I love it about cities. It's like a varied thing that I think is very European, have those different levels and still be able to build such a beautiful place in that difficult terrain there. Then it's the most Mediterranean feeling place, I think, in Switzerland. So it's nice to have palm trees, even though the weather right now isn't a good fit for that. But last year it was the perfect fit and the perfect experience, and it's great. Like have Switzerland, but still like a kind of Italian Mediterranean feeling with it. It's a perfect match, a match made in heaven, potentially.
Did you have the opportunity to buy something with Bitcoin in Lugano?
Of course. Yeah, yeah. Mainly food, I have to say. I'm not so much into shopping. I enjoy good food. I went to the worst place in Lugano, McDonald's, and I went to the best restaurant in Lugano, at least I was told. And the McDonald's experience was amazing in terms of payment I could use, not in terms of food, and the restaurant was amazing value. I thought for Switzerland it was amazing food value, and it was just great. And it's such a surprise that at such a place offering such good value, the owner would be a Bitcoiner and a convinced Bitcoiner. That's like an amazing match.
What other cities can learn from the Lugano Plan B experience?
Yeah, how little it actually takes. Just risk something. It's not that Lugano has transformed as a place. It doesn't even have different laws in place. It's just a good place to be, and then you can have a network effect and like bring in interesting people that brings in more interesting people, get the first merchants, give them a good experience, more merchants come in, and it's just amazing. And like more than 300 merchants already after a year. It shows you the power of the network effect. And I hope that continues, like make sure people don't have a bad experience. And then it's really a role model how easy it can be if you're willing to risk something, and if you realize the potential of Bitcoin, not only of Bitcoin, but of Bitcoiners all around the world.
If you have to convince someone to go to Lugano, what will you tell them?
Oh, it would be crazy not to go to Lugano. I mean, it's within Europe, so I'm European, of course. It's easy to be reached. You can have all the European experience you want from the cultural side, the gastronomical side, the quality of life side, and still be in a place. And that's unusual for Europe, where you feel there's a positive dynamic, like people are looking to the future. Every year, something new, something positive will be there. And I think that's unique. Usually you have to travel far away to Asia or Latin America to see that kind of dynamic and hope. And that, I think, speaks for itself. That you must visit Lugano.